Assalamu alaikum, Ramzan Mubarak, and marhaba to our global community joining from Canada, the UK, the USA, Dubai, and of course, Pakistan. Welcome to our webinar, Strengthening Institutions Through Islamic Philanthropy, part of Habib University's Reshaping Philanthropy initiative. As this is the blessed month of Ramzan, through today's program, Habib University seeks to connect with our global community to reflect on the spirit of Islamic giving. This webinar aims to provide a thought-provoking discussion on the deeper wisdom behind giving, its role in shaping societies and transforming societies, and how we can collectively sustain meaningful causes. My name is Noman Naqvi, and I am an associate professor in the Department of Comparative Humanities at Habib. Allow me to begin with an account of the rationale behind our Reshaping Philanthropy initiative. Since our founding just over a decade ago in 2014, Habib University has disbursed over $30 million in financial aid and scholarships to students at our institution, of which $9 million are disbursed through Zakat and Khums funds. This has allowed the university to support 4 out of every 5 students throughout their undergraduate journeys. Moreover, apart from being able to recruit meritorious students, Habib University's meteoric rise over this past decade is also because of our first-class faculty, as well as our state-of-the-art campus and facilities. This combination of merit, excellence, and generosity is, as you can imagine, extraordinarily expensive. Habib is thus not just a non-profit, but a big financial loss-making institution. And this is, in fact, a bold structural feature of our mission. That is, to make the commitment to education and knowledge part of the larger society. That is, to make higher education a community-owned mission. Hence, this huge deficit is covered by our growing body of hundreds of Mohsineen, many of whom are with us on this program today, generous donors who themselves contribute to Habib University purely out of their inspiration and commitment to our educational mission. Our university is reshaping philanthropy for the noble and vital purpose of higher education in Pakistan, a country that fares even worse in the higher education sector than its abysmal showing in primary and secondary education indices. Our reshaping of educational philanthropy to include higher education could not be more significant. It serves to orient such philanthropy towards aspirational goals that go far beyond charity as it is usually understood. In a philanthropic environment where only about 0.06% of all philanthropy has been directed towards higher education, our Reshaping Philanthropy initiative is a daring and transformative venture. Indeed, when Habib University was first launched, we were regularly told that what Pakistan needed was primary education, a statement that not only posits a false and misleading competition between levels of education, which are not a zero-sum game, but is demeaning to the legitimate higher aspirations of the 5th largest national population in the world. In fact, such an approach is historically grounded in a racist and colonial stagist view of human flourishing, one that posits a false equivalence between an individual's development from infancy to maturity and the histories of collectivities and peoples. Reshaping philanthropy is thus integral to our reparative educational mission. That is, our commitment to the nobility and universality of knowledge, to excellence, to universal merit, to a unique post-colonial curriculum, and to education as a societal, community-owned, and aspirational enterprise in line with Islamic inheritance and history. And with that, a brief introduction to the Reshaping Philanthropy, of which this webinar is a part, it is now my pleasure and privilege to introduce our speaker, Mr. Wasif Rizvi, the esteemed founding president of Habib University, Pakistan's premier liberal arts and science institution. Mr. Wasif Rizvi is a passionate advocate for a higher education model that is student-centric, interdisciplinary, and deeply rooted in the context of our surroundings. Under his visionary leadership, Habib University has pioneered a post-colonial liberal arts curriculum that is one of its kind globally, designed to challenge hegemonic knowledge systems and empower students to engage critically with our own histories, experiences, and realities. This innovative approach, combined with a diverse student body, accomplished faculty, and strategic collaborations with leading institutions, including the University of California, Berkeley, Texas A&M University, Stanford University, and the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, this has positioned Habib University as a globally recognized and admired institution. Its award-winning campus design and the distinction of being Pakistan's first-ever community-owned university further reflect its commitment to inclusivity and excellence. Through a need-blind admissions policy, Habib University ensures that high-merit students from marginalized backgrounds have access to world-class education. Mr. Wasif Rizvi holds twin graduate degrees from the Harvard Kennedy School and the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Before founding Habib University, he was associated with the Aga Khan Education Services in Pakistan, where he led numerous development projects across Asia and Africa, further enriching his expertise in transformative education. Now, just a bit about the format of the webinar. First, President Wasif Rizvi will deliver a presentation, which will be followed by a question and answer session. The chat will be enabled at the end for audience questions. So without further ado, I present to you Habib University's founding president, Mr. Wasif Rizvi.
Adab and salam, everyone. This is somewhat surreal to be introduced by our own 𝗴𝗃𝗃, who's a dear friend and is the very first faculty member that came to Habib University 3 years before we accepted our first student. So in a way, he is a profound co-founder of the institution. I don't recall any other incidents when we burdened him in introducing me to any of the event, but thank you. I actually feel wonderful and privileged. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and adab, wherever you are in the world. In Pakistan is a little after 10 o'clock. As Noman very eloquently introduced the theme of today's conversation, I'm going to be sharing a presentation. For some of you, it may be a repeat. So please bear with me and pretend that you're seeing it for the first time. This presentation will cover very quickly four distinct foci. First, the presentation is going to talk about extraordinary and profound legacy that Islamic societies, especially in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, crafted especially towards scholarship and higher education, and how those institutions really define the world that we currently inhabit, and various streams of epistemologies and knowledges. Then I'm going to talk about that how it inspired and continue to inspire similar institution forming in other parts of the world. I'm going to highlight the state of where things are in Pakistan, and then finally how Habib University has taken it upon ourselves to revive something that has been somewhat under the ravages of centuries for about 200-300 years. So these are four quick themes that we are going to cover. The title of the presentation is A Confluence of Generosity and Intellectual Richness. This is an extraordinary legacy of Islamic societies, starting at the very advent of the religion in the 7th century and 8th and 9th. And this legacy in many ways defined this idea of community coming together to invest in creating an intellectual fabric and its inheritance. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm starting with this quote from the brilliant young scholar who is we had the privilege of hosting him about a year ago at Habib University, 𝗴𝗶𝗃𝗶. He's a scholar in Islamic comparative religion, especially focusing on Islam, works on Sufis of Western Africa. And he delivered many conversations to this end, that one of the key strengths of Islamic civilization, early Islamic civilization, was that it was continuously identifying intellectual talent and ensuring that there are institutions that are there to cultivate that talent, and financial and other support, livelihood support that is available to these scholars in form of various sponsorships and scholarships. Basically, the fundamental structure of high quality higher education, which was the hallmark of early Islamic societies. So this is, I encourage all of you to look him up. If those of you who have not heard of him, he's perhaps one of the most interesting thinkers regarding comparative epistemologies in the United States or anywhere in the world. And he gave us a lot of inspiration regarding the overarching idea of reshaping philanthropy and the need for reshaping philanthropy in the Islamic world. Yes. This is a misra from 𝗴𝗶𝗃𝗶. I am sort of a 𝗴𝗶𝗃𝗶 addict. And like all addictions, they get a little enhanced during Ramzan. So I'll be delving into 𝗴𝗶𝗃𝗶 every now and then. And this is सादगी पे कौन मर जाए खुदा लड़ते हैं और हाथ में तलवार भी नहीं. But the second misra is pertinent, that the influence of Islamic societies had nothing to do with what is unfortunately usually reduced as the idea that they were conquerors. The fundamental impact was this extraordinary generation of knowledge that started right at the onset in the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries. Yes. This is a famous hadith from Rasulullah. One who proceeds on a path in pursuit of knowledge, God makes him proceed therewith on a path to the paradise. I think I have the Arabic of it. Man salaka tariqatan yaltamasu fihi ilman salallahu lahu bihi tariqatan ilal jannah. जो नॉलेज के रास्ते पर चलता है उसके लिए अल्लाह जन्नत के रास्ते आसान कर देता है. And there are many other aspects of inspiring it right from the theological foundation of Islam. So obviously this momentum sort of led to these phenomenal institutions. Two of them actually exist. Al-Qarwain is widely known as the largest continuous institution of higher learning in the world. It's in Morocco. As Zaytuna has been revived, this is actually contemporarily, maybe the same time, maybe even a little earlier than Al-Qarwain in Tunisia. Al-Azhar, of course, is there in Cairo, and Beit al-Hikmah, the famous one, in Baghdad. So various parts of the world, all of them were established via phenomenal generosity of individuals and patrons through zakat, through waqf, through wherever it was observed, homes. So these institutions had scholars that I'm going to talk about that actually defined the knowledge fabric of the contemporary world. What is extremely key is that the focus of this generosity was regarding establishing institutions of higher learning. So that dichotomy that Noman referred to, which is a false dichotomy between early education and later education, obviously did not exist at that time, and people actually saw tremendous value in establishing world-defining institutions of higher learning. Yes. And this was some of the outcomes, and they are, I think we need to just write there, and this is spanned over many centuries. For instance, people like Ibn al-Qurra and Ibn Shatir are in 14th and 15th, 13th, 14th, 15th, even early modernity. They were defining their fields. We unfortunately live in a bizarre world of an epistemic fraud and hegemony of the West. I was reading the other day, there was a headline that Pythagorean theorem was found 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born on tablets from Babylon. And these are sort of ubiquitous stories that we have come to understand knowledge and progress from such a chauvinistic perspective of the West that we somehow believe that the moon did not exist until a white guy looked up the sky and then saw it. Obviously, this has had a tremendous impact on the way our institutions operate or young people imagine. So this is an important conversation to see that how the scope of all aspects of knowledge was being advanced so comprehensively in 7th, 8th, 9th centuries from various societies, Chinese, Indian, and of course, Islamic societies. And there are people here, people like 𝗴𝗃𝗃𝗃, who is about 100, 200 years before Copernicus had figured out heliocentric solar system. Ibn al-Jahiz, he wrote this famous book, 𝗴𝗃𝗃𝗃, laid out all the fundamental tenets of evolution or origin of species. He was actually in 8th, 9th century. Of course, there are some who have been orientalized, so we know their name, people like Ibn Khaldun, Ibn Sina, but if you look at the stature of these phenomenal thinkers, there were so many more who were part of these institutions. What is common or nearly common among many of them, that many came from very modest backgrounds. And because these institutions were there, so they were celebrated and found patronships, which is sort of a prototypical idea of scholarships, which are made available in modern universities, and continued on. So they were lifelong adherent to phenomenal fields and creating their and deepening their craft and creating knowledge with the help of vast communities. Someone like 𝗴𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 al-Fahri, she's actually founded the first university. And so there are a couple of women here as well. I was, somebody forwarded me, and we're going to share it as well, or maybe on Habib University's social media, that how egalitarian and inclusive, both from background as well as gender perspective, was Bayt al-Hikmah. So it had a large number of female scholars in it. So all of this is part of the inheritance, and the fundamental force behind it was the spirit of giving in Islamic societies, in which various people who had means and the Islamic spirit of giving itself, as codified, especially in zakat and khums, were the engines to establish institutions which inspired these world-defining thinkers and scholars. Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple more. So one obviously it's we were focusing on, because just for the ironic, we live in the world defined by tech bros. This was the guy who sort of made it all possible. His name is Musa ibn al-Khwarizmi. Like all names that get distorted in various languages, my own name is pronounced as Wasif in America. So he obviously transitioned into al-Khwarizmi, and that's where the term algorithm comes from. So al-Khwarizmi really created a principles of algebra and algorithm, which he would have been a multi-trillionaire if he had access to intellectual property lawyers from Wall Street. But all of us are 1,000 years on. We all have gifts of, this conversation is possible as a result of the work that al-Khwarizmi had pioneered. Yeah. So this obviously did not go without being noticed. So the first iteration of the Christian world was extremely hostile towards, via crusades and all, towards anything that was happening east of Byzantine, and wanted to undermine it and etc. But the strain that was emerging out of especially Protestants, there was some genuine curiosity regarding these institutions and how they were so extraordinarily effective. So this whole notion, and in the US, especially folks who are listening in from the US, you're seeing this now for about 4 centuries, this tremendous momentum of the idea of endowment, which is basically a direct translation of Waqf, emerged. It established early on puritanical, maybe religious institutions like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, but it continued on, and it then started to establish other strains, other types of institutions like Stanford. So there is, on this slide, I don't know if you can read, it says a college where rich and poor will stand alike. Rice, which is a fantastic institution in Houston, the original vision and charter was that this should be tuition free. And it should, basically just as 𝗴𝗶𝗃𝗶𝗴 was, that it should cultivate, it should identify talent, bring in people from all backgrounds and liberate them from financial concerns. And really, society should come together to make that investment, to have this kind of extraordinary intellectual production and creation of new intellectual traditions. So these institutions are prominent, they are continue on, they are some of the highest ranked universities in the world, but the idea of a founder coming, stepping up, and then a community coming together, and especially helping and sustaining an institution of higher learning, and within that, ensuring that the support is directed towards students from all backgrounds, is basically the fundamental fabric of the way institutions in 8th, 9th, 10th century, 11th century Islamic world were operating. So we have written here that it was in obviously 1636, a modest waqf of a few $100 started Harvard University. Stanford at that time, 20 million would be equivalent to billions. And the same is true for Rice University, that these visionary folks founded these institutions, which continue to be a standard of excellence. I don't know for how long, looking at what's happening in the US, but nevertheless, for the last 200-300 years, they have been a gold standard of community coming together and creating institutions of higher learning. Yeah. Then what happened to us? So again, borrowing from Ghalib, there is his famous ghazal, "Hum wahan hain jahan se humko bhi kuch hamari khabar nahi aati." Another share from this ghazal can fit as well. Aage aati thi haal dil pe hansi, ab kisi baat par nahi aati. So unfortunately, there is a violent rupture, disconnect from the traditions and inheritances that we had a few centuries ago. And fallout of that particular disconnect is the state of our current institutions. Yeah. So obviously, one can, and this is not a conversation regarding the historical upheavals, but so many violent episodes that we have been going through. Obviously, European colonization is at the heart of it, and then it keeps on. It's a toxic gift that keeps on giving in form of nationalism, extremism, economic deprivation, and so on. But one of the things that it has done, that we have, as a society, as a community, the idea of institution building is somewhat lost in this violent dust. And community really is unable to see it as a large responsibility that it needs to come together to craft and build institutions as we did a few centuries ago. Yeah. And nowhere it is more apparent than one of the largest Islamic countries in terms of people in the world, Pakistan. Pakistan is almost the largest Islamic country in the world now. It's about 230, 40, 50 million people. This is our, those of you who are medical doctors who are listening in, this looks like a bad heart attack. This seems like this Pakistan's ranking in global higher education. This is sort of fluctuating somewhere near the bottom. The latest one being 121 out of 140 countries or so that they measure. So we have never really And if we can go back even further, the situation was never any better. So Pakistan, this is one of the least known facts regarding Pakistan's development indicators. While we look at health and primary education and some others, um, um, this is by far the worst performing indicators in our development scenario. One of the things which keep it this terrible is this enrollment rate. So the black graph that you're seeing is the tertiary enrollment. This is Pakistan's government's own numbers. So it's actually factually is actually even lower than this. That means that only 12% of eligible population, which is population from 18 to 26 or 27. So the much wanted youth bulge in Pakistan is not getting anywhere. Only 12% of them are in any institution of tertiary learning. In South Asia, this is marginally better than Afghanistan. And the next, Afghanistan is at 11%, and the next lowest is Bhutan, which is at 25%. So Pakistan objectively is one of the worst countries in the world in terms of higher education institutions. Yeah. So how do we take a step in such somewhat dismal scenario? How do we inspire ourselves, right? So how do we scale this somewhat frightening wasteland or desert? But this desert does, as Ghalib says, "Humne dasht-e-imkan ko ek naqsh pa paya." Dasht-e-imkan is a beautiful confluence. That dasht, while frightening, it contains possibilities. It contains potentiality. So let's see that how we have taken our step in this somewhat daunting plane of possibilities. Yeah. So basically, looking at our own intellectual heritage and especially the technical aspects of those institutions, these are fundamental points that we have to have in order to take that step in that plane of possibilities, in that dasht-e-imkan. That how do we make it possible for everybody? Whoever shows promise and talent and is eligible should be able to get high quality higher education. And how do we then appeal to this profound instinct of giving while the instinct of giving is not channeled towards creating institutions, it remains. And we're going to be sharing a short video in showing that how powerful is the potential of the culture of giving within Islamic societies. And then how this engagement with this instinct of giving can create a community movement to co-own, co-found, and then co-sustain an institution of higher learning. Yeah. So we are the first private institution of higher learning in 388 years. So Harvard was founded in 1636. Somehow the idea of private institutions of higher learning being supported by a wide range of society is contained in the US. And we are literally the first one who is attempting to do it outside of United States. And by reviving and re-engaging with our own inheritance and our own sense of giving and generosity. Triggering this movement is, of course, the remarkable Habib family, who has already supported Habib University with an enormous grant of about $80 million to create the university and then to continue to participate in as Noman in his introduction mentioned, in supporting the deficit that we deliberately incur. And I'm going to share that why it is very crucial for a university with this kind of mission to operate in such large discount and deficit. Yeah. So this is This is the first founding group that Habib family's generosity was able to inspire. So the idea was that how do we continue on that path? And the path is that how do we revive the sense of Islamic philanthropy for institution building, and how do we resonate with more and more people? And our Waqf and endowment model has already, Habib University in many ways is on its way to create one of the most healthy endowments of any institution of higher learning in the country in 10 short years. But very crucially, as you can see here, we are continuously providing significant financial assistance to 85% of our students. About half the students are on complete scholarships. So removing this crippling disenfranchising barrier of cost. Yeah. So this is a happy graph. I showed you somewhat dismal graph. This is a happy graph. This is the discount rate. So in United States, these universities with large endowment measure their generosity and they call it discount rate. That means that what percentage of potential tuition is discounted. So let's say if it says Stanford has 66% discount rate, that means for every $100, they are bringing in just $34. So that's a very good discount rate that allows them to support many students. And these are universities with billions of dollars of endowments. And look at Habib. Habib, alhamdulillah, sits at the top of this. We are, again, statistically the most generous, or one of the most generous private universities in the world. And as a result of that generosity, not a single student has ever dropped out in Habib University's 10-year history, citing financial reasons. We have about 2,000 students, alumni included, and a staggering 1,895 of them have been supported. 40% of the students come from local examination board. About 70% of the students come from very modest background, even maybe higher, 75%. One of the key pillars of their support is zakat and khums. We have distributed $30 million, and out of that, about $1.2 billion happened via religious philanthropies, which include zakat, sadaqas, and khums.
What if I told you the Muslim world holds $1 trillion treasure? Not oil, not minerals, but something far more powerful. Zakat. Each year, Muslims across the globe contribute $1 trillion in zakat, a staggering amount that surpasses any other philanthropic mobilization around the world. Yet, despite its immense scale, this resource has not led to the sustained development of transformative institutions in much of the Muslim world, especially in higher education, which is essential for societal progress. This isn't just an observation. The 2024 Nobel laureate in economics, Professor Darren Acemoglu, alongside his associates, highlighted a crucial insight. It's institutions, not just resources, that drive societal progress. So why hasn't zakat fueled the creation of such institutions? Today, most zakat contributions focus on immediate relief, feeding the hungry, sheltering the displaced, and responding to crises. These efforts are undeniably vital. They save lives and restore hope in times of need. But imagine if just a fraction of this immense generosity were redirected to establish enduring, transformative institutions. This idea is not new to the Muslim world. In the 9th and 10th centuries, zakat and waqf funded landmark institutions like Baghdad's 𝗴𝗀𝗃𝗃 and Tunis's Az-Zaytuna. These centers fostered trailblazers such as Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, and Ibn Khaldun, a pioneer in economics. But in modern times, this transformative potential has yet to be fully realized. Habib University has demonstrated that Islamic philanthropy is a powerful tool for institutional development. Since its inception in 2014, Habib University has awarded over $30 million in financial aid and scholarships, with more than $9 million coming directly from Zakat. This remarkable generosity, substantially powered by Zakat, supports 4 out of every 5 students. These graduates are not only redefining their own futures, but are also contributing to global innovation and societal progress, with many pursuing advanced studies at prestigious universities around the world. The proof of concept is clear. Imagine the transformative power of channeling just 1/5 of global Zakat contributions into establishing and sustaining inclusive institutions. This redirection could support the creation of world-class educational institutions across the Muslim world. Zakat is a resource for transformation. The Muslim world holds the means, the history, and the potential to rebuild a legacy that uplifts entire societies. Are we ready to transform this treasure into lasting change? Let us reimagine Zakat as a force for sustainable impact.
Good. So this was a apt recap of many of the points that I highlighted in the presentation. So this is the fundamental theme of today's conversation. The need to reshape philanthropy, especially to create institutions for higher education. Now, because there is a great credibility that scholars who win Nobel Prizes, so we lucked out, and the most recent Nobel laureate in economics cited this particular focus and this particular feature as the key distinguishing marker between societies who seem to be doing very well versus the ones who may have resources but are struggling. Building inclusive institutions not only promotes economic development, but also foster social progress and reduce inequality. This is a direct quote from his acceptance speech. So that's the video highlighted that there's an enormous, the calculation is anywhere between 400-500 billion to $1 trillion that gets mobilized. Not a lot of it gets recorded in Pakistan too. It is an enormous mobilization of goodwill, generosity, and philanthropy, especially around holy months like Ramadan and other key parts of the Islamic year. When you see this spirit of giving in high gear, even especially during at the time of COVID, we saw, and there was some mapping of it, graphing of it was done, that it was somewhere between 3 to 4% of Pakistani GDP, which was part of philanthropic giving. So the appeal is that if a portion of that philanthropic giving, while it's obviously meeting some urgent causes, is directed towards institution building in higher education, that seems like a very viable path for us to start establishing institutions that have the potential to have next 𝗴𝗃𝗶𝗰 or 𝗴𝗶𝘃𝗶𝗃. So what the two fundamental points in boxes here, that it especially enables us to provide this extraordinary access. So you saw that almost the entire student body benefits from it. So that's an extraordinary requirement in Pakistan when we see that tertiary enrollment is struggling in single digits. So this particular bottleneck, financial bottleneck, is relieved once religious philanthropy is directed towards supporting these students via financial aid and scholarships. And then very crucially, it allows this epistemic freedom. Now, I can't think of a more urgent time than now, when world really needs different ways of approaching reality, different ways of solving their problems. Islamic societies are held hostage to an epistemic hegemony in which we are not allowed to understand our own history, our religion, our art, our philosophy, anything about us from our own point of view. So Habib University uses this term, we call it reparative epistemology. So Noman, who's our founding faculty, is actually the architect of that particular term of reparation and reparative epistemology. And it allows our students to understand Pakistan and understand their own background, their own reality from very independent standpoints. This is one of the key reasons that about 80% of our students who are in the workforce, they have chosen to remain in Pakistan. They feel like that this is something that they understand and this is something that they can solve important problems. So these are already impacts that we are seeing. A universal access has been made possible, and extraordinary intellectual work is opening up as a result. Yeah. So if I were to quickly recap, apart from the video, so you see many checks. So we have shared this, that how Islam codified institution building as part of its own spirit of generosity, and it ushered in an era of remarkable intellectual growth. Christianity, especially in North America, really got inspired by it and has established their own institutions, which continue to be of highest caliber in higher education. We have taken it upon ourselves that how do we revive this inheritance and tradition, and how crucial is this generosity for us to be able to sustain the mission of the institution to remain virtually tuition-free and create extraordinary knowledge. And this is our message to all of you who are listening and hopefully beyond, that how this reshaping of philanthropy, which is endorsed by religious scholars. We have all sorts of endorsements and ijazas and Sharia compliance, that this is actually a crucial area where a religious philanthropy can be invested in. So we have this great checklist, but the final check, which is spelled somewhat differently, continues to remain with all of you. While there's an enormous mobilization, as the video stated, of hundreds of billions, if not close to $1 trillion, this is our chance to start viewing the potential of that particular mobilization for institution building, especially in higher education, to allow access to students from modest background and cultivate their talent to become leaders in our society and take us towards this crucially required healing in a very struggling and ailing world.
Well, this has been a very interesting evening, but we need to, I think, now close the program. So thank you to Mr. Wasif Rizvi, as well as to all of the people who were kind enough to join us at this time. And I hope you have a good rosa for the rest of the few hours, those of you who are joining from North America. And take care. Khuda Hafiz. Adab.